It's time to go, people. Too Deep, a football podcast, is streaming live right now. Thank you for joining us. If you're catching us on the podcast later, hit that like button, the stream button. Good compliments in the compliment section, or good, reviews in the compliment section, or compliments in the review section. I don't know. You figured out. You get what I'm at. Going after trolling for positive reviews. Remember, if you're catching us via the podcast, we stream live Wednesday nights at 9 p.m. Central. If you want to be a part of the broadcast, you can even be a part of the conversation. The comment section is available to folks on YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, and I believe even LinkedIn now. So check it out wherever you go, whatever your favorite social media platform is. We go at it with the usual crew. Jeff Chadiha from the NFL Network, NFL.com, is here. Eric Eager from Sumer Sports.
Just Eric Eager, huh?
Yeah, it's just me. I'm on my way to Sumer Sports. Is maybe
on his way to Sumer Sports after an incredible tenure at Pro Football Focus, PFF.com, where you can still see a lot of his great work. My name is Soren Petro from Sports Radio 810 WHB here in Kansas City. You can catch my work at 810WHB.com. By the way, Matt is quite the fan of Jeff's fashion. Nice to meet you, Jeff.
Like that. Courtesy of Dayton Moore. What's that?
I was going to make a comment about it, how I liked it. I'm like, oh, no, I'll just try to get to it. Let's get things rolling here. But Matt had the same reaction I did. Yeah. No one likes my, 10-year-old MIAA basketball T-shirt. Okay. All right. I guess I'll live without the compliments this one time.
Can't enjoy the world's on the field. Enjoy their swag off of it.
There you go. I like it. Mm-hmm. I like it. We got a lot we want to get to here tonight in the 2D podcast. We're going to get into, the blown call from Nathaniel Hackett on Monday Night Football. Dak Prescott is out. Are the Cowboys done? Lamar Jackson says no to 160 or 180 million guaranteed, depending upon which report you read. Tom Brady's future, what's it going to be? And by the way, I'll be back, but I'm taking a family vacay. Bills crushed the Rams in the opener. Are they this far ahead of everybody in the NFL? After 5 of 7 NFC teams lost in the opening week, who is the best team in the NFL? Tyreek Hill made his debut with the Dolphins. They were impressive against the Pats. Are they for real? What are we looking for in week 2? A lot to get to. Let's move quickly. Jeff, I will ask you. Nathaniel Hackett blows it at the end. Epic fail. Peyton Manning, I saw a story 62 times. Asked for a timeout during the stretch run on
that much? 62?
62
in a 40-second period of time?
I guess they counted it up. Like I guess it was whether it was like leading up to it. Now you got to call timeout when this happens, and then there was the stretch, and then him afterwards going timeout. You got to call timeout. Apparently 62 times he said timeout. Nathaniel Hackett then in the post-game interview decided to basically kind of poo-poo it like there wasn't an epic fail there. He's somewhat come back off those remarks. Can you come back from this kind of epic fail if you're a first-year head coach, Jeff?
Yeah, because you got 17 more games to go. But it was not a great debut. We can all agree on that. I think we can all acknowledge that if they should not have been in the situation to begin with, to have to kick that field goal. I think when you come out and apologize the way he apologized and try to present it as if this was the plan to get to the 46-yard line to kick a 64-yard field goal, it doesn't make it sound any better. And he looked like a guy who was in over his head. And I had a chance to be in Denver during training camp and talk to Nathaniel Hackett and the people there. And there's a lot of excitement about him and what he brings to the table. But then there are also people who in Green Bay say that, look, there were some questions about him leaving Green Bay and whether he was ready for this kind of opportunity. Didn't call the plays there. And it showed up. And so I don't want to crucify the guy after one game. I do think this was a very, very difficult challenge for this team in a very difficult place to play with a very difficult set of circumstances surrounding his quarterback. But, yeah, we've all talked about the way the AFC is going to be and the way the AFC West is going to be. And if you are a first-year coach performing like that in your first game, as much as I don't want to condemn him for the rest of the year, as much as I believe in their talent, it does make you think what's going to happen the next time he's in these kind of situations, because right now he seems overwhelmed.
Yeah, I mean, there's no way to put lipstick on the pig that was the end of that game. There's, the reality is if they don't fumble twice within the 5, we're not talking about this, and maybe he grows into the role. I do think the first time you're in that end game situation is a unique experience, and for it to happen in his first game that they need him to be perfect is unfortunate, right? It's maybe a product of bad timing. If he'd gotten off to a great 5-0 or 4-1 start and not had to manage a close game situation, maybe it looks a little bit different, Eric. But I'm trying to think of, do we have the epic fail like that at the end of a game from a coach that we can remember coming back to go on to be like, was there a Bill Parcells? Oh, no one remembers, but Parcells absolutely gagged it, or Bill Walsh had no idea what he was doing.
I mean, Andy Reid, right, has had his days as far as a end of game
objection.
What?
Name it.
Well, the end
Not
of game
the first game.
Cincinnati last year, he bungled it, right?
Well, okay, I'm saying, like, give me a guy who very early in his tenure, doesn't necessarily have to be the first game, but very early in his tenure, bombed the way this guy bombed and was able to come back from it. Doesn't mean it can't be done. I'm just wondering, is there a precedent of someone who has?
Sure. I actually think people have been doing that kind of stuff, like laying up for field goals when they shouldn't, et cetera. That's been the norm in the NFL. Right. It would almost, if one of these things would have happened, it probably would have happened in the last 5-6 years or so. Right.
Yeah. I would say, I think Kevin Stefanski got destroyed in his first game when they made the playoffs a couple of years ago. Maybe I'm wrong about it. You look it up, but I'm pretty sure they got killed by maybe it was Pittsburgh or Baltimore in week 1, and they ended up 11-5.
But I think there's a difference between just getting smoked, right? Like,
yeah.
And like bungling the clock management, right? Like, if you get beat by 30 or 40 points, that's a collective team effort, right? Like, and it ultimately is the head coach. The job rests on his shoulders. And so, yes, I do get that part of the equation. However, we're talking about, this was an epic failure of coaching duties. Like the clock manager on game day, everybody has times where, Andy Reid has come to the podium a number of times and said, you know what, they got us, tip your cap. He's clearly saying, look, game plan, guys, like, okay, I'm impressed, guys. Nice work. We got beat. Like, that does happen. I get it. But we're talking about a guy that on national TV had on the game day part of it just was buffoonery, right? I mean, this is Vic Fangio had clock management issues like this. Vic Fangio constantly settled for field goals and punted to put his defense back out there. That's the closest, by the way, same franchise, that this guy was supposed to fix that, because he was supposed to be the offensive guy who was aggressive and wasn't going to leave it to these kind of asinine situations. I can't, and I'm not saying it hasn't happened. Again, like I said, maybe Parcells had some epic blueberry, Bill Walsh, Vince Lombardi. I don't know. This is a monumental failure in an opener.
Yeah, I mean, it did. I mean, it looked like a coach who had no clue, right? And we've seen that. I mean, the moment Freddie Kitchens was a head coach, you knew, right? Like it didn't take that. I mean, the Cleveland Browns got killed by Tennessee in week 1 of 2019, and from that moment, you knew Freddie Kitchens couldn't be the team's head coach. But they don't come back. Yeah, it was. But this is as precipitous as it could have gotten. For a week 1 new head coach. Yeah.
Can he come back from it, Jeff?
I don't know. Like I said, it's a long season, but it's a tough conference. It's a really tough conference. And I just feel like, just knowing how NFL locker rooms are, I know that that's a young team, but still, even with a young team, those kind of moments can linger for a long time. He's going to have a really tremendous 3, 4, 5 game stretch here where they're winning games, they're decisive. He's making good calls, he's designing good stuff. The game plans are really strong. I just think that people talked about. Yeah, a friend of mine, James Palmer, covered that game. He talked about the mood in the locker room after the game, that guys were really despondent. And for a week 1 loss, you shouldn't have guys being so traumatized to the extent that it's like, oh my God, like what just happened here? Like that's to me those are the things I worry about, that when you're trying to be a first-year head coach and you're trying to set a standard and a culture, that from day 1, from the first game, you are laying such an egg that the players can't trust you. And that's where what really troubles me about the whole thing is that You paid all this money for Russell Wilson. You trade all these picks. He's supposed to be your savior, and you're making those kinds of decisions to ask a guy to kick a 64-yard field goal. That's something that's only happened twice in NFL history, a 60-plus yard field goal being made, that you're relying on that to win the game. I just think that kind of stuff is what concerns me and makes it hard to think that he's not going to have a rough ride for the next month or so.
Yeah, the thing for me, I go back to something, Jeff, and you talk to way more guys than I do, but I do get the opportunity to talk to a number of guys. And I remember I used to have a conversation every week with Brian Waters, and I was talking to him about coaches. It was in the midst of a Pioli year, one of their bad. They had one good year and 3 bad years, so it was one of the bad years there. And like there were questions about the offensive coordinator, and I said, listen, what do you do? Like the call comes in. He said, look, when the call comes in, we're going to run it because we're not going to make something up on the fly. Right. So no matter what, a bad play call is better than no play call. He said, but the thing is, with a coach, he said, if a coach will make you better, you will run through a wall for him. Right. That's what you want from a coach. And I think, at all levels, like you give an athlete, a player, an advantage, whether it's a track coach giving them a new way to start and get out of the blocks quicker. Listen, get your arm up quicker. And then all of a sudden they've taken 2/10 off their 100 and they're like, oh, wow. Then they're ready. I'm listening. What do you got? I'm a sponge. I want to hear what you got to say. But when you go out there and you make them a boob, like there were guys in that huddle going, what are we doing? And, he's going to have to make it up to him. Like, can he come back from it? I think he can, but it's going to have to be with some kind of sheer brilliance on his part, isn't it, Eric?
We're all 3 of us are Russell Wilson fans. Did it take a little of the shine off of Russell Wilson Monday?
Yeah, because Russell Wilson should have called timeout on his own.
I mean,
yes,
you're not Kirk Cousins, boys. Like this is you're supposed to be a real quarterback. Do you think Tom Brady lets that thing happen?
No.
Patrick Mahomes. Although
Patrick Mahomes would go kick Andy Reid in the nuts if he did that.
I don't know. Patrick Mahomes was signaling for a timeout he didn't have at the end of the AFC Championship game. I mean, or at the end of the first half.
Well, yeah, he'll be aggressive, and usually being aggressive is the right choice, right? So that, but Russell Wilson was when it at the end of the game when it came time to win your team a game, he threw his hand up. I just work here. That's a
good point.
Look for Wilson.
It's a good point. I remember a game very early on in Lamar Jackson's MVP season when they were playing in Seattle and they had a chance to go for it, or I think kick a field goal to tie it or whatever. And Lamar Jackson came to the sideline. And this is what also bugs me. You can call timeout early on and decide how you want to play it and have a discussion about it. That never happened. And so when in that situation, Lamar Jackson got to the sideline and John Harbaugh said, what do you want to do? Lamar, I want to go for it. That's what Lamar, I want to go for it. Let's win it right now. They went and won the game. That's what you do with your star quarterback, and that's how you win your team over, by letting them decide how are we going to win this game. I think everybody could live with them going for it on 4th and 5 and not getting it versus what they chose.
Especially when the investment in the quarterback was that many first-round picks and that much money. Like it and the problem with Russell Wilson in Seattle, what did we all say? Russell Wilson was a superstar that his team played like he was a scrub, right? And in this game, he played exactly like that player.
Like a scrub, or he played well and they treated him like a scrub?
Quarterback, like there are quarterbacks who have star outputs, Derek Carr, Kirk Cousins, Ryan Tannehill, who we think like it's just sort of like their median thing, right? But like when I don't know, to me, he's just getting less than the sum of the parts here, right? And we saw that in Seattle where the output was great, but the input, everybody kind of said, well, you're just a product of all this stuff, right? And I fear that's who Russell Wilson is, right? Like if Seattle thought about him for that long, and then he comes here and you start seeing it a little bit, it might be true.
Yeah, I agree, and I do like the comment that Russell Wilson was like a bystander. Like the fact that he came out and said, I love Nathaniel. We have confidence in Nathaniel. The moment you have to announce that you have confidence in somebody shows that your confidence is wavering. Yeah. Like, has anybody ever come out and gone, we have confidence in Bill Belichick? No. Has anybody come out and gone, we have confidence in Andy Reid, we have confidence in John Harbaugh? No. That statement in and of itself signifies a lack of confidence. Should there be a lack of confidence in Dallas? Not just like, obviously you felt like, okay, it's them and the Eagles, maybe the Commanders. I have the Commanders making it as a wild card. Maybe the Giants will be a little bit spunky or something. Maybe the division will be better. But the Cowboys are one of the ones that, because they have the quarterback, expensive one. They have a coach that, while he may be much maligned, has playoff experience. They ought to be in the playoffs. Okay. Most medical people are saying 6 to 8 weeks.
No.
Based upon what the injury was. They're not IRing him. They're thinking he can be back in 4. This smells of an owner that's got a lot at stake and says, like, no, I'm not listening to my medical people. He'll be back sooner than that. Like, is this the ultimate, Jerry moment where he's deciding how long a player is going to be out? And is this a sign that he could be, wrecking Dak's, future move? Kurt Warner had a bad thumb for like 3 years and was on his way out of the league with the Giants. And when he landed with the Cardinals, this was not a Hall of Fame quarterback in the making. This was a guy that was busted goods. I mean, I think this is a little bit bigger than maybe it's even, which is hard to believe with the Cowboys, Dak Prescott and Jerry Jones involved. But you national media types, Jeff, you may not be giving this all the hype it deserves.
Yeah, it does smell funny, but I see one of the comments I just saw it go by. It just talked about how Dallas was screwed before this ever happened. I mean, that's the important thing to remember here. The way they played in that game, if you watched that game, if you followed them throughout the offseason, throughout training camp, you knew this was barreling towards train wreck, dumpster fire type scenario. And it's just because they are, defensively, they got some things you like. You like Micah Parsons, you like Trayvon Diggs. There's some players over there who've got bright futures and are playing at a very high level, but spent a bunch of money on Ezekiel Elliott 2-3 years ago. And they're talking about trying to ride that train now as if there's still something to ride. I mean, that train is done. It's over. They don't want to concede that because of the money they put into him. They got, the salary cap was so screwed up they had to let Amari Cooper go. They were hoping that Michael Gallup could recover fast from an ACL, which is always a tricky proposition and a desperate move. You're out there with CeeDee Lamb and nobody else on the perimeter. You got a quarterback who needs to have playmakers around him. Your offensive line is reshuffled. All these things going into it. Yeah, they had a great offense last year, but you knew the more you watched that game that this team was not looking like a playoff team. Forget about competing in the NFC East. Just hoping to win 9 games was the scenario before he went down. So, whether or not they want to try to make it sound like he'll be back in a month versus 2 months, it doesn't matter. This team is not good enough to be in the playoffs regardless.
Okay. Eric?
Jeff, I think nailed it, except that he sort of the second part was, what he sort of thought would happen, which is Dallas is going to win like 5 or 6 games this year. The median was always going to be 9, but they were never going to actually win 9. They were either going to win 4, 5, or 6 or 12 or 13 like last year. If everything goes right, a bunch of things were already going wrong. And you saw it in the point spread. They were short favorites against Cincinnati before the injury. And now they're 7.5-point dogs. So this thing has moved like 8 points. Dak's not worth 8 points. It's Dak plus Tyron Smith, plus Michael Gallup, plus James Washington. All of that is going to lead to, being underdogs at home to a Bengals team that just lost to Pittsburgh. So, yeah, it's bad. I don't think it gets any better. And frankly, if Mike McCarthy wasn't on his last leg, they would probably just tank out this season. But they're in that sort of kind of mushy thing where he needs to win, and they can't.
I don't think they have it within their DNA in the Jones family to tank out a season. I think when Bill Belichick won't tank it out the first year Tom Brady's gone, I think you can see that a lot of people that are really successful just can't do it, even when it's the right thing to do. But I'll say this: you just described Mike McCarthy on his last leg. In some ways, this ought to buy him an extra year, right? If he's going to lose his quarterback for this long, because I'm sure the Jones family had a lot to do with the fact that their initial 53 had no long snapper, no kicker, and no backup quarterback. Now they ended up getting all those things, and it was a calculated risk. And we talked about this a few weeks ago. That, like, if you're the Eagles or Giants and you have the room, go take the backup quarterback. Right? And every team, by the way, does. There's some guy that the special teams coach is like, we got to have this guy. He's a gutty performer. He rallies the troops. My ass. If you have a chance to take away the backup quarterback from a division rival, you do it. And so shame on the Giants, shame on the Commanders, shame on the Eagles for not doing it. And they could have left Dallas right now with a quarterback that had been in there for like a week.
Like Will Grier.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think it's amazing. And then how about this? Shame on the 49ers. Isn't the Jimmy Garoppolo contract a no-trade clause in it? So they can't trade him.
Yeah, they can't get rid of him. Yeah.
You can waive it, though. It goes. Like, mainly it's for him, right? Like, he can waive. But if he agreed to it, you could trade him.
Yeah. I don't know. I think it should buy Mike McCarthy time. It won't. You know what coach coming into this week? I don't know if it changed off the last week. What active coach in the NFL has the best record against the spread?
I have no idea about that one.
Their career record against the spread amongst the 32 active NFL coaches, who had the best record coming into week one?
Dan Campbell.
Because there's a couple of guys that are 1-0.
Dan Campbell.
Yeah, bite ass. No chance. Mike McCarthy. Mike McCarthy had the best record against the spread. Now you could say like, yeah, that's because nobody thinks he's any good, so he gets a kiss in the numbers all the time. And so, there's different ways to spin that. But I thought that was amazing. Like Andy Reid was 8th, give you by example, which is still upper 4th. And short time guys have a chance to pad that. I thought that was interesting that McCarthy is considered a colossal boob because he didn't win more with Aaron Rodgers. But Aaron Rodgers hasn't won more since he left. And he's down there dealing with Dallas. I don't know. I think that's an interesting one to watch.
I was going to say it's not a bad thing for Dallas to have a rough year because when you look at what they need to do, they don't have the salary cap space to improve quickly. They need the draft capital. And so when you look at what happened with the Bills the year before they got Josh Allen or the Chargers the year before they got Justin Herbert, like being in that top 10 in the draft can make a huge difference for you.
Oh, agreed. And if they were smart, first of all, they gave Amari Cooper away. We've talked about it. They gave him away for what, a 5th or a 6th round pick. And again, Tyreek Hill's better, but is Amari Cooper worth like a 6th and Tyreek Hill worth a 1st, a 2nd, a 3rd, and a 4th? Like, come on.
Yeah.
Like, so part of what he's dealing with, Mike McCarthy being he, is what the general manager, Jones Jr., did in putting that roster together. I mean,
well, the Ezekiel Elliott and Jalen Smith contracts. I mean, that unfortunately, the trade of Amari Cooper is for a 5th round pick and all that capital back, right? Like that's, the Browns were in position to eat that contract, and hence they didn't have to give up that much for him. But that goes to the entire issue with the Cowboys, which is that they had this Zeke contract, which was tied around their neck, and then they had they had to get rid of Cooper. That was the only one that was actually going to work.
Let's talk about Lamar Jackson. He played week 1, no new contract. Reports were that somewhere between 160 and 180 million guaranteed dollars were turned down by Lamar Jackson. Should he have taken the contract offer that he was given, Jeff?
Yes, without question. And I know I'm the Lamar Jackson fan of the three of us. I know you guys probably like him a little bit. I like him more. But
I think it's fair. We all like him. I think you like him most, no doubt.
Yeah, but we always say this when we have this conversation. When you don't have an agent, these are the kind of mistakes you make. And I know that this is the difference between Lamar Jackson, the agent, and Lamar Jackson, the competitor. The competitor wants to be able to have the headline that says, I'm the highest paid quarterback in the NFL. I got more money than Deshaun Watson. I've got $231 million in guaranteed money. He's got $230 million. I'm at the top of the list. I'm above Aaron Rodgers and Patrick Mahomes and everybody else, Josh Allen. And that's the wrong way to look at this. The smart way to look at it is to say Deshaun Watson had a set of circumstances that had nothing to do with what I'm dealing with. He had bidders. He had a team going to trade him. He had a team that was going to receive draft capital in return for him. That's always going to change the dynamics in terms of what you can get. he's dealing with a team that has control of him for at least 2 more years beyond this season. At the end of the day, it's okay to be a guy who gets $180 million versus the guy who gets $230 million. That's pie in the sky money for every quarterback out there who's looking to get a big deal right now. So, yeah, if they were talking about that kind of money guaranteed, I don't see it getting higher than that. And if it's whatever, $5 to $10 million more, to me, that's not enough to put this off for another year.
A lot of factors go into a team's record. It's not just the quarterback, but on his watch, 6-1, 13-2, 11-4, 7-5. He's now 1-0. It's been declining as far as the one-loss record goes. It was so high up there, we knew it was going to decline. So I'm not saying that, oh my God, this is a stone falling to the bottom of the pond or anything. But 6-3 in those first 7 games. The next year, 36-6 TD to INT, 26-9, 16-13. Plus, he exposes himself to a lot of hits. And by the way, I know we throw around these numbers a lot and we become numb to it. It's $160 or $180 million that you will definitely have.
That's second most or third most all time.
And if you have 2 more good years, you say, I want to rework the deal, or 3 years maybe, I want to rework the deal, or I want to trade, and they will trade you, and whatever team trades for you, if you've played well, will give you more money. And if no one will trade for you, you didn't play well enough to deserve more money. See point A. You have $160 or $180 million that you didn't have at this moment. I get it. There's a good consolation prize of whatever he's making this year, 20 or was it 7 or 9?
23, 25 million or something like that.
25. Okay. It's pretty good, pretty good money this year, but it ain't 160, Eric.
Yeah, I mean, I think the problem is, and Jeff alluded to it, if you don't have an agent, like your question of should he take it is irrelevant because he's not. Like, yeah, it's for all the reasons that Jeff was saying, which was it's not going to ring the bell, and guys who are as good at football as Lamar Jackson are going to be competitive, and so that's why they by and large hire people to help curb that. Right? We have coaches that help curb our, aggressiveness and things like that in the same way. So he was not going to do this. An agent probably would have squeezed a little bit more out of the Ravens. I think that's the really hard part. The Ravens are not going to get beaten in a negotiation with most agents, let alone most players trying to do the representation for them. So that's my issue is like, have an agent. I think you basically get this deal or better. Instead, you end up having no deal.
Yeah, and on top of this, what also hurts him by not having an agent, he's the only star quarterback in the NFL who is not marketing himself up to his potential. Like every other big-time young quarterback or Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady is doing commercial after commercial. This guy's nowhere to be seen. And there are people who in Baltimore who have made this point to me of like, he does not have somebody who is giving him great advice about this. If you're Patrick Mahomes or even Aaron Rodgers, who obviously got top of the market money, you can say, look, okay, it's okay if I'm not getting paid whatever the $230 million that Deshaun Watson got, but I'm making so much money from State Farm and from shampoo and whatever else I'm making that I'm good. He doesn't have that. So at some point, you got to get that guaranteed money from somebody.
Yeah,
it goes back to not having somebody who's advising you in a smart way.
Yeah, it is. And listen, he makes a lot of money. I'm not asking anybody to shed a tear for him, but the reality is he's leaving a lot of money on the table, and not just the deal you mentioned by not having somebody who's out there because he's, they asked him, are what's the real deadline? I love this answer. What's the real deadline? It's the start of the regular season. Well, like, an hour before the game, he goes, an hour for the game, I'm not going to be thinking about a contract. Right. That's the point is the deadline's not really because you have other people that could be negotiating right up to that. And also you're prepping for a game. So you're not out there setting up the deal with Head and Shoulders, which by the way, now with a full head of hair, he would be great on Head and Shoulders. His new look would be a fantastic Head and Shoulders guy, but you got to have the time to go talk to the marketing people in New York or LA and set up the deal, and he doesn't have it, and he's leaving tens of millions of dollars on the table.
Jimmy Garoppolo is doing Subway commercials. Baker Mayfield was killing it with Progressive for 3-4 years, never sniffed an MVP.
Yeah, I mean, never really sniffed much of anything, you know. Yeah, that's a great comparison there. Tom Brady, we find out left for a family vacation in the midst of training camp. I'm sure this was like, I'm out. Okay, we plan this vacation. No, I want to go back. Okay, but we're going on this vacation, Tom. This is happening. And he's like, look, I want to come back. We want to have you back. Okay, but here's the deal. Like, I got to do this vacation thing. Sure. No problem. You know, what can you be? I know they won in the first game. They won largely on their defense. Eric, can you be committed when you're taking family vacays and you have this, Giselle is apparently talking about the complications that come with him playing. I mean, I think she's been done with football, it seems like, for 3 or 4 years.
Right.
Comments that end up being attributed to her allegedly. Can this be a healthy environment? Like, can it be, just somebody ragging your ass every time you come home and play high caliber football?
I don't know. I would say that many of a successful person have had difficult marriages, right? Like, you come back and hear like, oh, this person, how did they do it? And it's like, well, they actually, I think you can have a successful season with not having a, successful marriage. It's just going to be a little bit harder. The thing is like, how much is he already blocked out? I mean, he early in his life had a kid right before he went out with Giselle. Like, he's had some drama in his life, and he tends to overcome it. My issue is that he just kind of looked a little cooked on Sunday night. He looked a little old. He looked like he had a hard time moving around. And those receivers, every deep ball to Julio Jones is a 4-play deep ball. 1 to throw him the deep ball, and 3 to watch him limp off the field, stand on the sideline, run the ball twice. That offense is geriatric, right? For the Bucs.
Yeah. I mean, it's
go ahead.
Go
ahead. Go ahead.
I was just going to say that, look, we've all been in marriages and long-term relationships. Yeah, it's impossible to go home to your wife and you're trying to watch film or you're trying to get ready for the game or get in the playbook, and she's looking at you sideways and wondering, what are we doing here? She was in a major magazine talking about how tired she was of this. She wasn't being that candid about it, but basically what she was saying was like, look, he's been doing this a long time. We have a family. We've been together for 13 years. I'm tired of watching him get a hit. The same stuff she was saying 2 years ago. And so I've known Brady a long time. I remember doing an interview with him when he was in New England. He's got that same mentality that every great athlete has, where you got to be run out of the game. And maybe it has to get to this point now where, like Eric just said, like, the team is falling apart around you. You aren't playing at the same level. It's going to be a long road to hoe. I mean, it's a drug for him, but again, happy wife, happy life. I just think that I can't see him playing beyond this year, because it's clear to me, all this stuff about, was I retiring and I want to retire, whatever. It's clear that he wanted to keep playing. She wanted him done. He found a way to talk himself back onto the field, and now he's realizing how much of a pain in the ass that could be for him for the next 5-6 months because he chose that route.
Yeah, we did a thing, bold and daring predictions for the NFL. We did that here on this podcast as well, but on the radio show. And one of them I had was that Tom Brady does not finish the season in a Bucs uniform, and not because of injury, or if he is hurt, he's like, that's it, I'm out. Like, I think we've seen. I think Jeff's right. Like some of them have to be shoved out of the game. John Unitas, Joe Namath, stints with the Chargers and the Rams at the end of their careers, respectively. Joe Montana's was pretty successful in Kansas City, but he basically went out hurt. He took on more injuries his final year in Kansas City, and left the AFC Championship game hurt. But so I think that may be at play here. But also sometimes we've seen guys, mostly in baseball, like Mike Schmidt retired midseason. There are a number of guys that
Ken Griffey Jr. retired in like May of his last year. He just pieced out. Yeah, I mean, happens.
Yeah, I mean, and would you be shocked if Tom Brady did that, Jeff?
I would be shocked, just because, I mean, he's too much. Once he commits, he's in. He's going to go through the whole season. But I just feel like there's so much happening around him now, and I do get where his wife probably is coming from, or everybody else in his inner circle. It's like, what else do you need? Like no one's questioning your place in history. No one's questioning whether your success in New England had more to do with you or Bill Belichick. No one's questioning anything about you. And I've loved watching his career. I love the guy, but there is a part of me. It's just like, is it worth playing right now on this team just for one more shot at it? It's beyond obsessiveness. It's just to a point where it's like, I can see how it affects your home life in a way where your wife's looking at you like, dude, like, what's wrong with us? Like, what's wrong with it? Look at Peyton Manning's life. He's living a pretty good life right now.
I agree. A couple of years ago, there's I cover Sporting Kansas City here in Kansas City, the MLS franchise, and Matt Beasler, who's been on the World Cup team for the Americans, was the kind of the face of the franchise, and his career was coming to an end. And he decided, Sporting said, we're not going to re-sign you. And he went down and he played for Austin for a year. And some of the soccer fans are like, why would he go do that? He should just call it a career. And it's like, who are we to tell a guy it's over? No. Right? Like, I get it. Like, part of that is rooted in the fact that, like, man, if I could have been a quarterback and won one championship and thrown for 30,000 yards, I'd call it quits. This greedy bastard's at 85,007, Super Bowls and still going. Well, who are we to say that's enough? Mm-hmm. I mean, I do get that part of it. But so I don't begrudge him. I know you don't either, Jeff.
No.
And I get the logic, and I think that is the consensus. But I will say this. I mean, I just say I don't know how you can keep going. Like, at some point, it all becomes too much. And like and even whether it's him or anybody else, but who was it we had? Was it Matt Terry said, and he said, you think it's possible Mahomes' family life affected him last year? And Patrick Mahomes was getting married, having a baby, building a house. Yes. No, 100%. Yes. Yeah. Absolutely. I think it affected him. Yes. Yeah. 1,000,000%. It affects all of us.
I always say the number one thing men want in life is convenience. We just want to be able to do what the fuck we want to do and not have to deal with a whole bunch of shit to do it. And the more shit you put on us, the worse it gets for us. So it's like, so Tom Brady has to take that vacation. He's like, damn it. Okay, I'm taking this vacation because it's too hard to go home to this woman. She's driving me nuts.
Yeah. I told her we'd go when I thought I was done, but now we're not done. But I still got to go do this. And people got to let me go do this. Yeah. Chris Rock said it a long time ago. Can I just get my foot in the door and give me the big piece of chicken? Right. Like, one of the greatest lines ever on how it works. And even Tom Brady's life, I don't think it's any different for that one. Speaking of bad debuts, and Brady's wasn't awful, but the Packers' debut was awful. They stunk in week one yet again, Eric. Aaron Rodgers didn't play. And he was awful, and they were awful last year. He's awful again. Listen, is anybody bearing the Packers? No, but I do wonder if they aren't becoming a little bit complacent with being crap to open. And maybe it's not quite as easy as they made it look to flip the switch last year. Like, I get it. There's a track record there. I don't think anybody should be burying the Green Bay Packers. But I also think it's a little bit dangerous to always donate the first week of the season. And I think at some point, whether it's Rodgers going down as a 38-year-old quarterback, he's more susceptible to being hurt. If he's out for 5 weeks and you donated a week, it gets harder to get there, in any season, doesn't it, Eric?
Yeah, well, and especially when it's your division rival, the one that's of the teams in your division has gotten the closest to you over the past few years, right? And, I think, pains me to say it, but I thought the Vikings played really well. I also think they were wind-aided by the Packers and how uncreative they were defensively, how soft they were at times offensively. Like, they ran a shotgun run to Dillon at the 1-yard line on 4th and 1. I mean, it seems like it's the softest 4th down play ever. And then, of course, they had the drop. Christian Watson drops a 75-yard bomb where he, absolutely cooked Patrick Peterson. That game could have been different. But the moment that drop happened, you could see it in Rodgers' face. He's like, I'd rather be at Burning Man. And that was, that was telling from the get-go.
Yeah, I agree. Is it easy as just flipping a switch for the Packers?
It's easy when Devontae Adams is there. I mean, That's always that's the cure all that he had in seasons past when things started off rough. You could always say, well, I got the best receiver in football to throw to, and we'll find a way to make some magic happen in some games, and we'll be all right. Once you lose that, things change. Even as great as Aaron Rodgers is, as Eric pointed out, just the hits he was taking, just forget about just the play of the receivers, just the amount of hits he was taking just because, whether receivers aren't on the same page with him, receivers aren't getting open, he doesn't trust them to make the plays in the tight windows. All that stuff affects this offense. And so it's really the looks he gave, the frustration in his face, the shrug shoulders, the rolling of the eyes, all that stuff tells you that he knows that it's going to be a long road here. And I agree. I was watching Get Up with Marcus. I think Marcus Spears made this point on Get Up about how, every other star quarterback in the league is taking their receivers out in the offseason and working with them. We saw Patrick Mahomes do it here in Kansas City a couple times. Peyton Manning was known for doing it. Tom Brady's done it. This guy doesn't do it. He's doing his own thing. He's not playing with these guys in the preseason. And I know Aaron poo-pooed it on the Pat McAfee show a couple of days later and said, you're not going to get that just by working out. These guys got to be in the real fire and get all the bullets, every cliche you can throw out there for playing in real football games. But there is some truth to that if you're a receiver in that room, you probably do feel like I need more from my quarterback. I need you, or the organization needs to be saying, we need more from you to help when these guys come along, and not just say, well, they got to figure it out. It's a big part of succeeding in the NFL is having your quarterback set the standard, and he hasn't done that.
Eric, I'd love a breakdown of how much teams benching their star players for the entire preseason, what it turns into wins and losses, like the first quarter of the year, or at least the first two games.
It was 3-10, or 3-7 this week, but also the Vikings and the Packers played each other. So then, there was but it was pretty profound.
That was on quarterbacks, right?
Yeah, they measured quarterback.
Yeah.
If your quarterback didn't play, which is, I would say that's a decent proxy.
Yeah, I agree. And so I don't get it. I mean, I understand you got this tremendous asset and you don't want to get it hurt. But the other thing is injuries are up. There are always a lot of injuries in weeks 1 and 2 because guys aren't playing full games. There's just their bodies aren't ready for a full game. Even if you play a quarter here and then 2 quarters there, even that's a big jump. When you go from nothing and, to then playing 4 quarters of football, that's a tremendous shock to your body. And, I always talk about, the little, all you got to do is not play basketball for a year. Like when you get old, people who play basketball all the time, what are you talking about? When you get old and you have kids and a life and demands, and then it's like, hey, we're going to go play some ball. Yeah, let's go play some ball. And you play, and then you get done, and you're like, oh my God. Even if you work out all the time, you're like, all the support muscles, the stop-start muscles that you haven't used, like the treadmill, there's no stop-start, all those things. And there's no support the knee with a 300-pound man leaning on you, falling on you. All those support muscles aren't there. And it's no wonder why everybody's getting hurt in the first couple of weeks when they had little or no contact beforehand. I mean, that is one part of the more physical practices of training camp. I absolutely believe better guys, for a full season. Holdouts always equaled injuries, right? We knew that back in the days when guys would actually hold out contract wise, they'd come in and immediately get hurt. It always happened. That I don't have any numbers, but that's just reality, isn't it, Jeff?
Oh, it is. It is. And that's why, again, living here in Kansas City, we talk about just how rugged Andy Reid's training camp is, but there is value in that. There is value in getting your body ready, your mind ready to handle that kind of grind. And it's just, again, I think, look, I think it's just the way of the world. When I started covering football back in the day, you had 2-a-day practices and it was a practice in the morning. You had a break, you came back, practice in the afternoon, and you were going full pass probably a lot of those days. And if you were Dick Vermeil, you were doing 3 times a day. And so I don't want to say that's should be the norm, but I do think the way it is now, it's so hard to get your body ready to go and your mind ready in week 1, unless you're just, I can't even think of the right team for that. It's just because every team that was doing that, except for the Vikings, was having problems, unless they were playing somebody who was doing that as well. So,
Right.
yeah, that's a great point to make. Yeah, I just think that, and with the Packers especially, it's like if you're not playing your star players, and I'm not advocating for these guys to be playing in preseason games, but there's so little time over the course of the year to get in sync with other teammates, to build culture and do all the stuff we're talking about as far as getting your body ready. The chances of you struggling early on are pretty high.
Well, it also ruins the whole injury projection. So you look at somebody like Marcus Peters in Baltimore. We all thought he'd be ready for the year, and all of a sudden, boom, he's not. Right? If he's like, if there was a, hey, you need to get on the field at least week 3 or 4, like it used to be, coming off an ACL when you came off an ACL, then you're better able to predict David Bakhtiari being out week 1 because he never got on the field in the preseason type of thing. So it has a cascading effect there as well.
Yeah, it does. Bills, seems like a long time ago now, but on Thursday Night Football, crushed the Rams in the opener. Is Buffalo this far ahead of the field, Jeff? And is that maybe, more about the Rams and losing a left tackle, a top wide receiver, who else they lost? Oh, their top edge rusher. Is this more about how far the Rams didn't play a lot of guys either? Is this more about the Rams backing up or the Bills taking a giant leap?
Well, the Rams certainly didn't show up in the way we would have hoped them to. But yeah, I mean, I think Buffalo, at least I did. I spent a lot of time talking about Buffalo throughout the offseason, and you get some people who would be like, oh, why is everybody so high on Buffalo? 13 seconds, they've blown it, they haven't been able to get over the Chiefs hump the last couple of years. And after that game, I didn't hear much of that. There was a lot more people who were like, okay, now I see what people are seeing in this team. And it's really more so, two things separate them right now. One is just the emergence of Josh Allen, the evolution of him, the improvement. And 2 is the defense. I mean, you look at what they're bringing up front now with Von Miller and the way he has taken the Boogie Bashams and the Greg Rousseaus under his wing, took them to his pass rushing camp and spent time with them this offseason to help them grow. That's a lot to deal with. And so when you're talking about a team, I know Mike Sando's on your show a lot, and I think he talked about just what happens when you pair an elite quarterback with a great defense.
Right.
Like, you usually get a championship out of that. And so I don't see nothing changed about what I thought Buffalo could be, but I was surprised. I wouldn't say surprised. I was impressed with where Allen has taken his game and with what Von Miller, can do. Now, he's got to stay healthy, but what he can do for this team.
By the way, I'm glad you were listening to that, because as that conversation was happening, I had you in my head. I'm like, Jeff is giddy hearing this about the quarterback with the defense. I was like, this is one for Jeff Chadiha.
I'm a student of the game, man. It
right.
works pretty well.
It does. It does. Listen, is Josh Allen the best quarterback in the NFL, or can he be the best of the quarterback? Can he be as good as anybody? And then the rest of the team around him carries them to a championship. It is right now, and this is a phrase that Eric, you coined. I don't know if it was on PFF, but I know you were the first one on my radio show to say it. Every year it's a team Super Bowl, right? And sometimes it changes. The dynamics change during the course of the season. Going in, this was the Bills Super Bowl. 1 week in, it's their Super Bowl. If Allen can be as good as anybody else, it does seem like the rest of the team around him is better than anybody else's.
Yeah, I have Allen as quarterback 2 in the NFL that I would have behind Pat. I think it's close. I think Allen's best day is very close to Pat's best day. So he's there. He's right there, right? If they get modest roster bumps above what the Chiefs have, they're a better team than the Chiefs, right? Like, so I think Allen can certainly be a Super Bowl quarterback. I think he's, as long as he stays durable and stuff like that, like, this team's going to be hard to beat. And they took out Beasley, they took out Emmanuel Sanders. Didn't matter on Thursday. It was even after the turnovers, had a fantastic game.
Titans plus 10 at the Bills. Does that sound about right to you, Jeff? Is there that much margin between the Bills, and it is in Buffalo for the record, but that's neutral field. Bills by a touchdown. Is that fair, or is that even enough? Because as I look at that, I'm kind of liking me some Bills in that one.
To me, the Titans were taking a step back regardless. So I know that they got the pedigree and they were the number 1 seed and great coach and all that. Just what they have going offensively is just not a great mix. A lot of either young or unproven receivers, and Derrick Henry is struggling in week 1. I'm sure he'll be fine, but he may not be. We've seen what happened with running backs once they've had a ton of carries and 2,000-yard seasons. Like, this may be the year when he starts to go on that Larry Johnson downhill trek. But yeah, I mean, Buffalo, it would not surprise me if Buffalo won 15 games this year. I think their ceiling is so high right now that it's hard to find any team right now in the NFL who I would say is going to, I mean, they can be beat. I don't want to say this. They can be beat, but I think every game they play, if they're healthy and they're playing at their peak, I don't think anybody can really handle what they can throw at them.
I think the Derrick Henry point's a good one. I had Herm Edwards told me 2,000 carries was the mark. Like, you don't want to back after 2,000 carries. I don't know. I mean, Derrick Henry's at 1,422. I don't know that it's the total carries, because early in his career, 110, 176, 215, his first 3 years, that doesn't bother you. But it's the 303 and 378 back-to-back where he led the league in carries. They had this great talent, and instead of saying let's protect it, they said coaches just can't help but just keep giving him the ball, and I think that may end up costing him in the long run. I think that's an interesting point on it. 10 points are the Titans falling that far? The Bills that far ahead in your mind, Eric? Or are you jumping on the Titans?
It's crazy to me that a 1 seed in a conference is 10-point underdogs to a obviously lower seeded team the next year in week 2 without like a quarterback injury or something like that. Like, that's an insane fall from grace by the Titans. Last year at home, they were 6.5 win underdogs to Buffalo. So, maybe a little bit there. I can't take the Titans. I don't know who they're going to throw to. Traylon Burks looked okay on Sunday, but no one else was to speak of. And Buffalo, I think, with the time off, are going to have a decent time covering this number.
Yeah. NFC, we talked about the Rams not looking good, the Packers not looking good. 5 of the 7 playoff teams from last year, Rams, Packers, Cowboys, 49ers, Cardinals, all lose. That means that only the Eagles and who am I forgetting?
The Eagles and the Bucks.
Eagles and the Bucks were the only winners. So who is the best team in the NFC, Jeff?
Right now it's Philadelphia. It pains me to think that right now. I'm saying right now, September 13th.
No, I hear you.
The Eagles look like the best team. Every other team you mentioned stunk it up. Even the Bucks stunk it up in the way they play. They probably should have destroyed Dallas, given the way Dallas was looking.
All I'm hearing here is how good Detroit is, because think about.
That was a great game. I wish,
It's like the Bum Phillips Oilers. They were within 3, right? They covered the spread, and Philadelphia is like the 0-2 Bucks.
Yeah. This is the first time Detroit will be favored in a game.
20 games.
It was 24 record.
Oh my Lord. They are.
I love that for them.
They opened 2-point dogs. They're now laying a point at home against the Commanders.
And to the sports books, anyone that wants to sponsor this podcast, you're welcome.
Eagles, Lions, NFC Championship game preview, I guess is what I'm hearing from Eric. I don't think it's the Rams. I think this, somebody said the Super Bowl hangover is real. I tend to agree. What do we think of the 49ers? Like, how much do we ding them?
Shanahan. We lost Shanahan. This is one of those years.
He's never done it back to back. I said it was a big year for him to prove that. Trey Lance, but the weather was awful.
Playing a monsoon.
First year coach is a tough guy to game plan for, and he wasn't a head coach even in college to try to figure out how he's going to attack you. I mean, no mulligan there for the 49ers. No one's going to put it on the Seahawks. The Saints barely beat the Falcons. nobody's buying the Vikings, right? That's more about the Packers.
I think the Vikings are actually a team that people, after last week, that was a fundamentally good win, right? That was an impressive win. Most games in the NFL are won by accident. That was not won by accident.
I'm with Jeff. Like right now, you'd be like, well, the Eagles, got to win on the road against an improved team. But like, if you're like, it's the Eagles, you are definitely holding your nose if you're announcing the Eagles are the team to beat in the NFC.
I love what AJ Brown brings to them, and he showed up big day one. And so that with Devontae Smith and Miles Sanders and Dallas, that's a lot, and a really good offensive line. You don't have to be a star in Jalen Hurts to make that work. I mean, people don't, he's got a lot to prove, but you can work with that if you're him.
Let's talk about the Miami Dolphins. They were impressive, 20-7 winners over Bill Belichick and the New England Patriots. That's what we got. Tua, 23 of 33, 270 and a touch. He completes a 4th and 7 for a big conversion that I think turned into a touchdown. Was that, or did they just convert with the big play? I can't remember. Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle together. Tyreek Hill, 8 catches for 94 yards, 4 for 69 and a touch for Waddle. I think that was the 4th and 7 that he took in for the touchdown. Couldn't really run the ball, but gave up nothing to the Patriots, who are working with a new offensive coordinator. Where's your level of excitement about the Dolphins right now, Eric? And what, is Tyreek Hill the missing link?
No, they scored 1 offensive touchdown in that game. I mean, Tua missed like 4 or 5 like really easy plays. Tyreek looked great. He looked spry. But the defense was good for sure. And they were without Byron Jones, which is a tough loss for them. So I don't know. I would say, this week, the 3.5-point underdogs in Baltimore, they beat Baltimore last year at home, but it was kind of like, because it was off rest and all that kind of stuff. I think this week is going to be a far more definitive than last week. I think New England is terrible. Like, I think that they're going to be one of the bottom 3 or 4 teams in the AFC.
Yeah, I'm with Eric on this one. I mean, I think someone just put it up there. Patriots stink. Like that was the takeaway in this, and I do believe that there's more from what I saw offensively. I like what they did offensively with Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. The numbers weren't great for Tua, but I felt like there was more confidence and more continuity in what they were doing. A lot of short throws, jet sweeps, all that stuff. Jalen Waddle got free on a big play. But yeah, it's really, can they play defense at a high level? Can the quarterback be a game manager? And against the Patriots, you can do that stuff because they're not bringing anything to the table you're worried about. But we'll learn more about them when they play the Ravens. Even with Kyle Fuller going down, last week, it's a big loss for them. And Marcus Peters not being back at full strength, but I think we'll know more about them against Baltimore.
Let's talk about that. What are we looking for in week 2? I'll give you one of the things I'm looking for, and it's what Jeff just said. I'll piggyback off that. I think that Dolphins-Ravens game is one of the most intriguing games out there because we do learn a lot. Is Lamar Jackson locked in? Are the Ravens on their way back? I've got the Ravens winning the division based largely on, John Harbaugh for one, and Lamar Jackson, and the Ravens track record, and the last place schedule. They come up against a Dolphins team that let's give the Dolphins some love for the fact that their defense equaled the Patriots offense in points scored. The Patriots were a playoff team last year, right? Like, you can't get excited about KC thumping Arizona, a playoff team, and give no credit to the Dolphins for beating a playoff team last year. And I know none of us are, but I do think the Dolphins defense deserves some love. But I do love the Ravens-Dolphins game. That's definitely one of the things that I'm looking at in week 2, because I think we're going to define a lot about both these teams, aren't we, Jeff?
Yeah, for sure. Like, well, for me, I want to see who blossoms in the NFC East now, because now you got 3 really intriguing teams. I just blew up the Eagles as being the best team in the NFC, but Carson Wentz threw 4 touchdown passes for your Commanders, your wild card playoff team. And the Giants with Brian Dable, unleashing Saquon Barkley and managing Daniel Jones.
The Giants went into week 1 with the easiest schedule in the NFL this year. They beat a team that is in the top half of their schedule, right? A Titans team that's better than average, right? They, It's there. The path is there. The problem is Daniel Jones sucks. Holy bucket. He's like, I've always held out hope.
News flash, huh?
They won that game. Saquon Barkley turned the clock back to like 2017 on week 1. So Jones is just, I mean, he's got to be better. He's just got to be better. Sack fumbles. He slides before the first down. Like the guy's the worst version of the quarterback you want to see in the 4th year.
He's not going to be better. This just in. He's not going to be better. Jeff, what any highlights for week 2?
I like Vikings Eagles. That's the one I want to watch. I think, obviously tomorrow night's game with Chargers and Chiefs is huge, but I just feel like we know those are 2 good teams. We know those teams high likelihood of being in the postseason, but the Eagles and the Vikings saw a lot of good in them in the first weeks of that Monday night game. I'll be watching with a lot of anticipation to see what happens, especially with the Vikings too. And Justin Jefferson looked like an MVP candidate.
Yeah, he was fantastic. Eric, you got a highlight?
Well, yeah, I mean, Chiefs Chargers is the big one, of course, but I agree with Jeff. Eagles Vikings is like the team that wins that game, especially if they win it handily. That is a top 2 team in the conference, right?
Yeah.
We'll shake things out with LA and Tampa and Green Bay all kind of looking bad, Dallas being basically dead. Whoever wins this game, you can talk yourself into saying, okay, they're 2-0 against 2 NFC opponents that are pretty decent, and I think that it's going to go a long way. If the Vikings fall to 1-1, they're all thinking about, oh, okay, well, it's back to normal. We're, they're over 500 for the first time since the pandemic, and so they want to build on that momentum. And then the Eagles are favored here; they should win this game. So it's a huge test for both teams.
And we'll highlight again, Lions favored for the first time in 24 games. And I do think they need to, hey, we have had a gutty effort against the playoff team. They need to get a win, right? It's one thing to win some games at the end of the year when the year is lost. They need to get wins when they matter and keep themselves relevant. I think that's a big one. And to your point about the Patriots, I mean, I like the Patriots and Steelers. Are we watching Chuck Noll post Terry Bradshaw with Bill Belichick? Like, at some point, what have you done for me lately? Like, the playoffs were nice last year. Nobody thought they had a shot, right? It was a commercial filler for the teams that really could go out and win it. And the Steelers, Mike Tomlin did up, give him great credit, but the Patriots need to show something. Like, the Steelers aren't supposed to be good. So if you're a playoff team, you should handle business against the Steelers. And I think there's a little bit of a back against the wall thing with the Patriots in that game against the Steelers as well. Big slate. I know this in survivor pools, as they're called. I'm in one that had almost 15,000 entries, 9,400 out in week
Denver.
94 all over the place. Ties do not advance.
Yeah.
So the ties were a problem. Bengals losing was a big one. Like, I do think that one of the stories of week 1, I think, to watch in week 2 was that there were good football even teams that won, right? Like the Saints winning. The Falcons are a lot of people's pick to be the worst team in football. They almost took down the Saints. The Bears took out the 49ers. That cleared a lot of the board for people. Steelers over Bengals was a big one. What was another one?
The Texans tying with Colts
was huge. That was Giants over Titans, cleared the board for a lot. Vikings over Packers cleared a lot of them. It was. And then the Seahawks over the Broncos. I mean, it was. If you're in a survivor pool, I hope you had multiple entries, because the likelihood that anyone with one entry survived is a long shot.
Yeah, I mean, I think the issue though is this week you're actually going to have. You had no double-digit spreads last week. This week you have Falcons, Rams, Houston, Denver, in Denver, Chicago, Green Bay. You know, Buffalo versus Tennessee. Like this week, there are some survivor picks that everybody's going to take, and they'll probably win.
Yeah, there'll be one. There's usually one that goes down. You don't want to be on that. So we'll see. All right, that's going to do it for us. Remember, if you're catching us via the podcast, we stream live Wednesdays at 9 p.m. Central. You can catch us on all the major social media platforms. You can be a part of the conversation in the chat room. We thank everybody in the chat room. Great conversation in there today via the Twitch, YouTube, Facebook, and LinkedIn. You can be a part of the chat room. You can also get us on the Twitter if you want to catch the taping of the podcast live. Do that Wednesdays at 9 p.m. So for Jeff Chadiha from the NFL Network, Eric Eager on his way to Sumer Sports, I'm Soren Petro from Sports Radio 810 WHB in Kansas City. Thank you very much for joining.